You guys hear that? The Thundering Herd is approaching. Marshall and Ohio State will kick off in the Horseshoe right behind us on Saturday at noon. If you're not going to be here, go to Fox. You can see it there. That's Tim May, the 41-year vet. He'll be in the building on Saturday. Andy Backstrom, he'll be in the building on Saturday. Me, Spencer Holbrook. Let's talk about it. Ohio State Marshall. Talked to Ryan Day tonight. Talked to Denzel Burke, a couple offensive linemen, actually 3 offensive linemen, Lorenzo Styles and Arvell Reese. Going to mix it up tonight. Go with Andy first. Andy, what'd you learn?
A lot. I think with the offensive line, they're starting to build that confidence. I think the game against Western Michigan was a huge building block for them, especially for someone like Tegra Shabola making your second career start. You get the sense that, having those chunk runs, they had 10 run plays or 10 or more yards in that game, and he was saying that can be kind of infectious. They feed off of one another, each one of those plays. And then we got to talk to Austin Sareveld, who also made his first 2 career starts in those first 2 games. And he might, he's not going to be starting again because now Donovan Jackson's back, but he still is going to be playing in some capacity, and he's ready to play at any position, whether that's right guard, left guard, whether that's tackle if they ask him to, and maybe in that extra tackle position, the Bison package. Whatever they want him to do, he's going to do. And it's been an interesting kind of whirlwind for him over the last month, in training camp, to have the illness sweep through, have an opportunity to play with the first team offense. And then, as you mentioned, Spencer, I think in a question to him, his first snap at Ohio State was in a start, which just does not usually happen for any player, and especially not an offensive lineman.
What'd you learn, Tim?
Well, number one, I'm writing about that, this feel that this offensive line has. You could see it on display against Western Michigan. There was a flow to it that wasn't there the previous week in the opener against Akron. It had a lot to do, like Anders is talking about there, it has a lot to do with Austin Sareveld making his second start, Tegra Shabola making his second start, and then of course, now, here comes Donovan Jackson, a preseason All-American, one of the great offensive linemen, as Ryan Day pointed out, in the country, maybe the best guard, as Ryan Day points out, in the country. Now all of a sudden he's shoved back in there. Will there be a little rust involved, or will this clock just tick up a few more seconds, a little bit of a faster rhythm? It's going to be interesting to watch, but it's kind of like the rich are getting richer this week from an offensive line standpoint of having the services of a player like that. But I learned a lot of things, but I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Yeah, the offensive line talk is interesting. The thing that I thought was also interesting, and one of the things that I walked in the building hoping to learn from Ryan Day, and we did without really learning anything, is like they're going to use Brandon Ennis and Jaden Ballard at kick returner. The 25-yard return in the opening kickoff of the season that was not a touchdown. Ryan Day thought it should have been a touchdown. And then I think, forcing the Buckeyes to start the second half against Western Michigan on the 4-yard line because of a communication error with Jaden Ballard has kind of put that job in jeopardy when it comes to being his. And so Brandon Ennis is going to get a crack at that as well. Ryan Day declined to say who was going to be first in that, but you have the sense that now that they're at least looking, that Brandon Ennis is going to get a crack at that job to not only take the reins of that punt return job that he's already got on lockdown, that is his job, but also he's going to get a chance, Andy, to be the starting kick returner now for Ohio State and kind of take ownership of both of those.
They believe he can do both, which I think is totally doable. It's not a position that's quite demanding. Sometimes you're only returning 1 or 2 kicks in a game, 1 or 2 punts in a game. Most of Brandon Ennis' punts that he had to return against Western Michigan were fair caught, right?
Yeah.
So he couldn't do much with it. And that might be the case going forward because of what he did week 1 against Akron and running back for 60 total yards on 4 returns. So, yeah, I don't think that's too much of a load for him at all. And I think we're going to see him play more and more receiver as well, considering what we saw in week 2 against West Michigan.
I don't see any reason why more Brandon Ennis touching the football would be a detriment or a negative for this Ohio State football team.
Correct.
I really was, I'm not going to say pulling for, that's the wrong way of terming it, but Jaden Ballard, this was, you're hoping to see a breakout from him this year. And I still think the potential is there. But Brandon Ennis with the ball in his hands, you can see it when he has the ball in his hands. There's a spark there. There's a move there. There's I call them the one-cut wonders, the guys who understand the flow of a return game, whether it's a punt or kickoff. Punt is the toughest job in football. Punt return is the toughest job in football. Past that, kickoff return takes a little bit more, I don't know what you want to call it. Guts is not the right term.
Gusto.
But you can get hit pretty hard on punt return, obviously. But you gotta just make that cut, and boy, the crease you're seeing that's developing, you hope it stays there. You know what I mean, type thing. And Brandon Ennis, I'm very impressed by that aspect of his return game. He'll make one cut and go and live with it. So this would be a plus for Ohio State all the way around.
Yeah, well, here's the deal, guys. Like,
If they do get to field more than one kickoff.
Yeah, because it was just
Unlike
one.
last week.
It was just one against Western Michigan because of the shutout. Here's the deal. Ryan Day said time and time again in the preseason that you feel Brandon Ennis when you're out there. Well, if you're trying to get a better kick return, put the guy out there who gives you that feel, and you can feel him making plays. You can feel him doing things. I thought the fourth down catch that he had was magnificent. Then he also, has a little bit of showboat to him where he knows he's good, so he's going to celebrate a little bit. Like, you need that, and I'll use the word, you need that gusto, I think, at kick returner. You need a little bit of that,
You heard what Charles Huff, the Marshall coach, said about Brandon Ennis. He recruited him,
at Alabama.
Point. Yeah, and he gets it. I mean, when he was talking about the roster, for example, he talked about, there are maybe better players at every position in the country, individuals at each, but there's no collection like the roster Ohio State's got. And one of the great examples of that collection is Brandon Ennis, because he can do things for you when he's healthy.
He's also the kind of guy who's a ridiculously good wide receiver and is on the bench for most of the time at wide receiver. So get him involved. And I think that, as we get deeper into this, you're going to see him make an impact and potentially be the guy to break that drought. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, but someone who's already making an impact is Arvell Reese.
The king of the transition, folks. He's getting good at this.
Speaking of running fast.
He's getting so good at this.
Speaking of running fast, sideline to sideline.
Instead of the ball in his hands, with the ball in his eyes.
There you go.
Sure.
Absolutely, man. This guy.
Arvell Reese has been really impressive so far, and we got to talk to him. He was pretty open and honest about how things went last year. He played on special teams, didn't play a defensive snap. He started at linebacker, then they moved him to edge in training camp when he came in the summer. I don't know how thrilled he was about that. It was kind of a long-term project for a short-term gain, and he didn't gain the weight they expected him to gain. He ultimately moves back to linebacker and has been awesome pretty much since they've done that. And he stood out maybe the most of anyone on this team the first couple of weeks of guys that maybe you weren't thinking about going into the season.
Yeah.
But especially when the summer came around and those first two games happened, you came away being like, this guy could be a star at Ohio State. And again, he was candid with just how maybe he didn't take things seriously enough last year. And we heard from Ryan Day about the uptick in preparation that Arvell Reese has had over the last couple of weeks. That's why he's earning more reps. That's why he's playing faster, and that's shown up so far.
Yeah, you heard me ask him too. I mean, what beats in your heart, man? Because when you watch him play, he looks like you want a linebacker to look on video. I mean, he's going, as Ryan Day has said many times, he's going very fast to the football. He wants to be in the frame, at the end frame of every offensive play he's going against. He has a desire to play there. And, the interesting thing about them possibly or trying that little experiment of moving him to possibly being an edge guy, if I was him, I'd have taken that as a compliment, because they saw some potential there with him. Mm-hmm. And then you looked at the linebacker room, and, for example, is he going, if you leave him at linebacker, if he's at linebacker, how much is he going to play?
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste, these days, you don't want to waste a game, much less a season, in that regard of not getting the most you can out of every individual player. So, but yeah, his eyes light up when he talks about playing linebacker, and it's on the video, you can see it.
And then there's Denzel Burke, who the last time we saw him was ejected from the Western Michigan game in the first half. He sat down at the table and he said, I'm not answering any questions about the ejection, the targeting, so don't even ask. And then everybody asked him about the targeting.
That was the first one. I sasaid, well, this isn't about the targeting, but what was it like standing there afterwards and having to watch and all this kind of, and then you can kind of ease into it,
Yeah, well,
because clearly he got hit in the side of the helmet. He doesn't usually drop his head when he's tackling right on down the line. He got, for want of another technical term, he got screwed with not only the call but the replay review, which didn't rectify the bad call.
Yeah,
he knows that.
Yeah,
Ryan Day knows that.
Yeah, yes, correct. He did say that it was a bullcrap call. That's the exact terminology he used. I promise he would say something entirely different if he was allowed. But that's okay. I thought he was very diplomatic in the way he handled it, in the most Denzel Burke way possible. He's very excited, Andy, to get back on the field, and you can probably guess why.
He's been really good, really since the beginning of last season. It's unfortunate that a few injury and then this ejection, of course, so like a few issues like that have come up have kind of cut short his play and maybe the tape he would have. But again, I don't know how much further he would have had to play in that game because of how much they were ahead and how much depth they wanted to play. And as Ryan Day has talked about, it was almost a good lesson for this team, having Jermaine Matthews sprung into action there. Kind of a reminder of how good Jermaine Matthews is as well. Wasn't even targeted in that game. Hard to throw at him as well. So I think, Denzel Burke has been a stud. He continues to be a stud. And then the other guy we got to talk to was Lorenzo Styles, who's also in that defensive backfield. And they're expecting him to play a little bit more and more. And I think that's really fascinating because maybe he's a guy that next year could start at that nickel spot, like at least be in that conversation. And he's really earned his time through great play on special teams. We saw him be the special teams player of the game against Western Michigan, had a tackle in punt coverage, had a tackle in kick coverage. And he's just showing up on the defensive side of the ball and seems to have really embraced the transition he made from offense a couple years ago.
He's an example of when I like to show people there's a difference between a regular person and a football player. I'm talking about a football player who plays at a high level. There's not fearless, may not be the correct term, but there's a gusto to the great football players of wanting to go down. I know you used that word earlier. Of wanting to go down and make a play and hit somebody at full speed.
It's reckless, Tim.
I don't know if reckless is the right term because you got to get there under control. So, and he has that. His brother has it. His father had it. Lorenzo Styles Sr. was a middle linebacker here for 3-4 years back in the mid '90s. And Lorenzo, I mean, good for him. Instead of sulking because he's not necessarily starting and playing on a regular basis on the defense, he's gone the opposite direction and shown what he's all about from an attitude standpoint on special teams. And maybe that's gushing a little bit about the guy. I think anybody who's watching football, watching these games, can see it.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going to get out of here because it's getting a little late. Andy Backstrom, Tim May, Spencer Holbrook, talked to a lot of Buckeyes. We're going to have all of that coverage at lettermenrow.com. Go there right now, get your membership. You can read all that coverage about all of those Buckeyes. Stay locked into the YouTube channel. We've got a lot more coming. We've got a live show on Thursday night. We've got Tim's podcast is live from Wednesday with Matt Wilhelm. Go get all of that breakdown from the Idle Week. We've got the live show Thursday night. We've got Friday morning. We're coming out with bold predictions, the preview show that we like to do, the fun show. We get to have a little bit more fun. What's up, Tim?
Tomorrow or Friday when we do that, am I allowed to recycle again? Yes, I am.
All right. Well. Get the same prediction you got from Tim the first 2 weeks and go to lettermenrow.com, get all of that coverage. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video below. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com.